Amen. Okay, and then chapter 2, I will be a unifying church member. Who can tell me something about that chapter? Hmm? All right. Praise God. Chapter 3, I will not let my church be about my preferences and desires. What was that about?
Oh, man. It's
This is
not
not
about
Burger
me.
King. All
It's not
right.
about me. It's all about the body of Christ.
Amen. Chapter 4, I will pray for my church leaders. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
How many of y'all been doing that? Well, some of y'all ain't said nothing yet, boy, I tell you.
Some raise their hand.
Some raise their hands, amen. See, y'all, how many of y'all signed y'all's names in these books? Lord have mercy. This is not the responsive crowd tonight. Maybe we just need to turn and smile at somebody. Hallelujah. Boy, I tell you, if looks could kill, I'd probably be dead right now.
Not at all, Bishop.
You roll up
Not
my
at all.
casket. Hallelujah. I'll pray for my church leaders. And today, we're going to have chapter number 5. I will lead my family to be healthy church members. And so we've had all the way from our administrator to our assistant pastor to our youth leader to our women's chairman to our men's chairman. Now we have our Sunday school superintendent who will be teaching us tonight on I will lead my family to be healthy church members. And she is no stranger to us. She's also a counselor, and she serves in this church many capacities, and she's earned doctorate in psychology. Is that correct? I got that right?
Pretty much.
I don't know if I, because it's different degrees. So, and very knowledgeable in the Word of God as pastor's wife for how many years?
40.
40 years. And so she's no novice in things of the church.
I mean, he pastored 40 years. And because I said something today about it used to be, and somebody, Sister Benita thought he was dead.
Oh, praise the Lord. Her husband is still living. He
Yes,
just
he
retired
is.
from pastoring right now.
Exactly.
But can we put our hands together and applaud our speaker for tonight, Dr. Renee Johnson.
Thank you so very much. Anybody have any eyeglass cleaner wipes? Your glasses, bro? Okay. I'm so sorry. I really am. Okay, we'll see what we can do. All right, Jesus. By the way, most of you were in Sunday school either this past Sunday or the Sunday before that, when I told you about my failure to ask God to bless me, and me opening up to get to my Bible to do my devotion. Okay, thanks. To do my devotion, and stuff from Facebook and all that kept popping up, and I kept moving around, and I said, okay, I'm gonna get back to the scriptures in a minute. And then my screen, when I admitted that openly, when I confessed it, by that night the whole screen was ruined. So, but I just want you to know it makes a really good footrest. I just put the tablet on the floor because everybody in my family, the left leg is shorter than the right, so it just made a really good footrest. And I told my husband, it's really about me putting the devil under my feet. Okay. Okay, our lesson tonight. Oh, okay. Our lesson for tonight is I will lead my family to be healthy family members. Uh, I had no idea Bishop was going to assign this to me, but as a marriage and family therapist, because that's my specialty, um, this allows us to compare our carnal families with church families. And it starts off, this, this young man, this man was talking about his mentor, Bob, and how much he influenced him. And he was saying that, thank you, that this man was so influential in his life that if he had influenced anybody else, he was sure all of that would change the world. So the first thing I want to ask you, who was the most influential person in your life that made you want to remain a Christian? Some folk have two. Yes.
When we were little, and my mom was young, she's about 17, 18, 19. So mom and them would go to the clubs and everything. But on the corner was a Seventh-day Adventist church. So Saturday morning, my brother and I, Saturday morning, can you hear me? I'll take this. Yeah. Saturday morning, my brother and I were at the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And there was an older lady there named Mrs. Reinhardt. And she taught us the first 10 books of the Bible, and we sang and everything. That was my first experience and probably my most lasting experience as far as church is concerned, even though I was really young. That would be Mrs. Reinhardt.
All right. Anybody else?
I say my wife. We first moved here in 1962, and we started going to church. I worked there were a lot of hours because it was a new job, and she would take all the kids to church, and then she made them all get baptized. Start caring for the Holy Ghost. And I was working late at night. She said, "You got to come to church because we going." I said, "Well, I'm working over." She said, "Still going, So I drove the truck after. They let me drive the truck to the church, and I got baptized and see the Holy Ghost the same night.
Okay.
My wife, the one that got me going. Amen.
All right. Anybody else? Bishop?
Hallelujah. Initially, my mother, who would take us to church as children, and then later on in life, my pastor.
Okay. Anybody else? Let's see, if y'all would sit a little closer, you could just pass it to the next chair. It's hard-headed. Okay, I understand. All right, well, look, church members. Bishop has asked us a number of times to sit up front and sit close together. They ain't moving, Bishop. Okay. Oh, he said, praise the Lord. Yes. Is your mic on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
It was my sister. She used to come home from work after reading her Bible at work all day. She'd come home and sit on the kitchen table and read. And she invited me to church. I said, what is this? So that influenced me to go to church. And after going with her, I received the Holy Ghost.
Okay. It is really, was there anybody else? I'm sorry. It's really important that you learned about the Lord in childhood. Because if you grow up in the knowledge of God, you're just better as an adult, a better church member as an adult, as opposed to someone who never knew the Lord, never had, generally speaking. I'm not saying every single person. And it's good if you can look back and say, that person made the difference in my life. Now, for me, I had several, but one of the most important ones was my father. I'm sorry, my grandfather. My mother was his only child, and so when my grandmother died and Mama moved the family to Indianapolis, he came and we just became his life. He spoiled us outrageously, but every day he'd have his Bible reading, and so as he was reading the Bible, we could not disturb him. So looking at it, must have been something really important in that book that grandfather won't stop, that he'll tell us, hush, go play. He never said that. And so we grew up understanding. And it's the same thing. If you, anymore, we're having more young people whose parents were and quite possibly still drug addicts. And so when that happens, you grow up knowing that that drug means more to your mama than anything else. More important than you get to school, more important than you having dinner. That drug is the most important thing. And so I just saw on the news, I think it was last night, 2 parents both overdosed, and the kids were in the back seat. Just sitting in the middle of the highway, overdosing. The use of that drug was more important than getting where they were going, than driver safety, than the safety of their children, or even themselves. And so whatever that parent, and we are whatever we grew up to be. You either lived up to your parents' expectations or you lived down to them. And so those people that were influential, not only did they teach us how important it was, it tells us that we owe that back. And so we have to find ways to be influential in other people's lives. Okay? And so this man, Bob, I'm sorry, ain't nobody calling me. This man, Bob, was influential to this man that was at the church. Now, he said the story, he's telling this story, and his backstory is he was a new husband and a new father, and he knew it was time to lead his family to church. Okay? And that's important. I know a woman, she had several children, and we'd see her and her husband, who was chairman of deacon board, but we wouldn't see the children. She'd say they didn't feel like coming. What? How you not feel like that? Living in my house. How you feel like that? You don't give them that option when they go to school Monday morning. And if you show your children, if you show your family, whether it's your siblings or anybody else in your extended family, or your family of origin, when you show them that church attendance is important, they fall in line. Because you don't ever plan to go laundromat on Sunday morning. If you're on the praise team, that everybody should know. Everybody that know you need to know where you going to be at 10 o'clock. They just know. Nobody in my house has ever expected me to fix breakfast on a Sunday morning. Ever. Poor children. Actually, I put their stuff in the fridge, but you better grab it and go, because when I honk that horn, everybody, you can ask my son. When I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go, and I can't tell you the number of times he'd be running out the house, buttoning his shirt and carrying his shoes and socks. I didn't care if it was snow on the ground. We going to church, and we go at a certain time. So that in and of itself is extremely important. Anyway, he has this mentor, and Bob's wife was faithful. The children were faithful, and even after they got into adulthood, they were faithful. Now, the Bible does tell us to train up a child in the way it should go. In the way, which is the way of Christ, that it should go. Now, they may stray, but if you've trained them, they always have something to come back to. They know how to get back home. I remember when Reverend Pastor Firstborn, he was out doing some stuff he had no business doing. And this was right at the height of my heart conditions. And I said to him, son, I would give my life for you, but I'll be doggone if I let you take it. I am praying for you. God is waiting on your return. He's right there with his hand outstretched, but you got to raise yours up. He don't have to come and sit on the ground and push you up to your feet. He doesn't have to do that. You got to want him. You got to seek after him. So if your children stray, and some of them stray a long way away, they still have some place to come back to. They know how to get back. They know what took them away, and they know what they need to come back to. So what we teach our children and our families, we have to be cognizant of the fact that they're watching us. And I had this afternoon's class do a little exercise. Everybody just do like that. And just look through that little peephole. And just kind of look around the room. Okay, all of you know that this is a huge room. But all you see is what's going on right there. So our children are watching us. And they're saying, oh, that's what you do on Sunday morning. Oh, you read your Bible often. That's what you do. Every kid knows when mom and daddy ain't doing well. But if they're coming together and they're keeping you out of it, oh, that's how you handle issues. So it's extremely important for us to raise our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. Anyway, this guy takes Bob. I named him Ted. Bob takes Ted under his wing, and he does what most new Christians or young adult Christians, whatever. He comes into the church and he's real enthusiastic. And we all can remember back when we were like that. We were innocent. We were enthusiastic. We had all these plans. And yet the longer we stayed, like Ted did, he began to notice imperfections. He started noticing imperfections of the members. He started noticing imperfections in the pastor. The only person he missed was himself. And so Bob had to teach him, get the beam out of your own eye. Some folk have a huge log just jammed up in there, and they're trying to tell you how to get that little toothpick out of yours. So when we get that way, and honestly, Bishop talked about all of this Sunday. He talked about every bit of it. And so my question is, has anybody here experienced a dullness, the arrival of a dullness or dampening of your faith based on looking at church members from the pulpit to the back door? Just by a show of hands. How many have experienced that? Okay, then my question is, what did you do as a result of it? How many backslid or left the church?
My thing was that I'd seen things in the church and maybe left the church, for whatever reason, but it never affected my faith.
Okay.
It was more about the human part of it, and then once I got past that, then I could look at things differently, but my faith was never affected by what was going on in the church.
Okay.
If that makes any kind of sense.
It makes good sense.
That particular assembly, or
Well, my story is not a good one because I've. Yeah, I didn't think it was. Yeah, my problem is that I've been in a few different churches and had left for one reason or another, and I don't know if any of those were really good reasons, but I can use this church as an example because, see, I've come back to this church, and that's been based on what I was experiencing at the other churches and what I experienced at this church, and I realized that when I went somewhere else, what I really missed from the short time that I was here. And so that's why I've come back to this church and making a commitment to be here almost every time the door is open, because I'm kind of at that point where this gentleman Ted was at, because I'm excited and all of these things, but I already know I'm at this other point now where I understand that everybody's not perfect, and so now I can look at things differently than, let's say, I would have been able to last year maybe.
Okay. But a lot of people, when they see people as they really are in the church, because ain't no hurt like a church hurt. Most of them, when they leave, they don't just leave that local congregation, they just backslide. Now, when that happened to me, it was because I really thought everybody in the church was what they said they were. I had no idea that president of the Senior Women's Missionary, I didn't know she could lie. I didn't know she would. I really didn't know. I did not know that the pastor would cover her lies rather than to expose the truth because people were looking. I didn't know that. And so it dampened my faith. Because, you know, when you go out there and you're sinning, you don't really think about your faith. You don't really think about your Jesus. You're thinking about whatever it is, however many things you're doing. And I was doing lots of things. But when I came to myself, I knew who I needed and what I needed to do. I can remember just as well laying on this recliner, and I'm sipping wine, and I'm smoking good reefer, and I couldn't get high enough to get away from what was hurting me. But when I came back, I didn't care all I wanted was Jesus. I didn't care who I walked past. I don't care who I had to walk around. I didn't care who I had to walk under. I didn't care. All I wanted was Jesus. And then I began to accept people the way they were. And that's called maturity. That's spiritual maturity. And like I said, Bishop was telling us Sunday that we don't have any value. We exist for one purpose, and that is to praise and worship God and serve Him. And we serve Him by serving others. And the Bible tells us that God is the rewarder of them that diligently seek Him. So that says to me, God puts a value on what you do. Now, your works are not going to save you. But if you're saved, you want to work. Okay? And so, and it's the same, it is the very same thing on your job. If you're a waitress anywhere, let's say Ruby Tuesday, People don't, when they order, they don't really look in your face. They don't really pay attention to, I don't care if you didn't have a bad day. Here's my order. We don't place any value on that. But let somebody walk in and they're a big doctor, they're a medical doctor or whatever. And we place a higher value on that person. That's why the Bible gives us a story. The person that comes in and looks shabby and all of that, and then and we tell them, go somewhere and now sit in the back there and be quiet, please. Don't attract attention. And then the person that comes in fine array, please come up and sit up front. We place a different value on them. The difference is God puts the same value on every soul. Now, he might place a different value on the things that you do because he is the rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So he's placing a value, and so we need to strive to be like him. He valued us to the point that he sent Christ so that we would all have an opportunity. Before, and this gets to me every time I say it, before the foundation of the world was laid, in the mind of God, the Lamb had already been slain. That is how much he loved us. He sent Jesus so that Jesus could gather us and bring us back to him. So that's our value. Okay, and so let me just throw in this commercial. As I said, this comes with spiritual maturity. You can see things that are going on in the church that you don't particularly care about. You got ideas. You got opinions on how it should be. But it ain't your church. It just ain't. Now, you can dictate what goes on in your house. If you don't like live plants in your house, you don't have to ever have one. If you like China and you don't like Melmac, you don't ever have to have any. That's your house, that's your business. But this house does not belong to us. And not any of the people belong to us. And there is hierarchy that God established from the very beginning. And we have to understand that. So this spiritual maturity is extremely important. And doesn't matter what age you are physically. Some people have been in the church for years and they still on milk. And I might add organic or special formula at that. Because their spiritual systems are too sensitive. These are what I would call preemies. Y'all know you got to have special stuff for preemies. Special formula, special whatever. Because their systems are too fragile and too delicate. Some people in the church are still infants and they're on regular formula and the bottle. And every time they cry, they expect somebody to come through. They expect pastor to come through with that bottle of milk. A formula, I'm sorry. Some people in the church are still toddlers. And they waddle a lot. We remember when our babies were starting to walk, and they walk a little bit, and they just toddle all. That's why they call them toddlers. Just toddle everywhere. And they fall down often. And when a baby falls, they will scream from here to high heaven. And you pick that baby up, ain't nothing wrong. Because as soon as you hug them and pet them up, they're fine. Well, I just want to say this pastor ain't got that kind of time. And this is what I would say if I was the pastor and you were wanting me to do all that extra petting you up every time you fall, and, because you didn't even bruise your knee, you just fell on it. I would be sending you to God. That's where you asked me to go when you gave me trouble. Do we not do that? Do we not say that? Well, pastor, he can handle it. When in fact it's our responsibility. And we must understand the church is God's. It's pastor's church by stewardship and God's by ownership. So we have to respect the hierarchy. And then I got to say this or I'll be remiss. It really is time for those in the congregation that are still top. It really is time to put them sippy cups away, okay? Been in church for years, still holding that sippy cup. I have a granddaughter, and she had a little sippy cup. And every time she comes, Grandmama, anybody drink out of my sippy cup? Got your own sippy cup with your name on it or your favorite color. And that is not to be. It is time to put the sippy cups away and move on to meat, even if it has to be ground first. Because some people can be on meat, and yet their systems are so sensitive, they can't eat it by the chunk. My Reverend Pastor Firstborn and my oldest daughter, Kiana, they just 2 whacks and it's gone. They put a chunk of meat in there and they just and swallow. I chew ice cream. I chew cream of wheat. That's why it takes me so long. But we need to be off of that ground chuck and be on some roast beef. Now I'm just saying. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. So then the question comes, what kind of church member are you? Where do you fall in those categories? What kind of church member are you? On page 58, we examine the correlation. We examine and correlate the church and the family. Because the church operates on the family system, just like your home does. You've got to have somebody got to provide for the family. In home is mama or daddy or whoever. And the church is the pastors, then the deacons, and on down. The hierarchy is listed in the scriptures. And so everybody has to stay in their place. You don't expect a 10-year-old to go out and get a job. And so you don't expect a brand new convert to come in and be able to do the things that somebody's been sitting there doing that job 30 years. It's an unreasonable expectation. But those of us that consider ourselves mature, we need to have a spirit of discernment and know who in the congregation needs our help. We do. How many in here consider yourselves as having the gift of discernment? Show of hands. Okay, if we do, then we need to act like it. We should be able to see when a member is slipping, is falling, is hurt, is injured. We should not wait until the ambulance comes and hauls them out of here. We should be able to discern by people's expressions and their aura. I'm not talking about getting in their business because, personally, I ain't interested in nobody's business unless they paying me. Now, I'm just being for real. Until I came here, then Bishop said, give it away, because Bishop, you give your talents here. And I ain't complaining about that, because I owe that. I owe all of it to God. And I'm happy to do it. But prior to that, I always said, I'm not interested in nobody's business unless they pay me. You got to be sitting in front of my desk. And at the end, when that timer go off, I don't know how many of you have been to shrinks, but when that timer go off, it's time to pay. The sign on the door before you go in. All services must be paid at the time that the services are rendered. And we could use that concept in the church. God blesses us every time we bless other people. So we are paying for the privilege of belonging to Christ. Does that make sense? And again, what kind of church member are you? How do you get along with your own family members? And you know what? You can tell what goes on in the home by how folk act at the church. I was one of those girls that my mother just preached feminism. You know, you have to carry yourself like a lady. You have to walk like a lady. I remember being such a tomboy at 12. She used to make me walk across the room with books on my head until I learned how to walk like a lady. And I stayed a tomboy so long, I'm sure she was worried, because she did allude to that fact at some point. But you can tell. We had a member, a deacon, and so my husband was out of town preaching revival, and the furnace went out. So I called the deacon and asked him to come light the furnace. His wife got upset about it. She said, he don't light the furnace at home. I said, how your furnace get lit? She said, I go and do it. That's why he doesn't. And the reason he came was because he knew that I wouldn't. I couldn't. And even if I did, I don't pump gas right now. I got 3 sons and a husband. So when my gas get low, I park the car and I take his. Because Mama said that was not very feminine. Which leads me to this. We all have carried into adulthood what are called life commandments. And life commandments are those things that you were either told or it was inferred or you accepted something out of your environment and you carried it on. So no, I'm not. I tried to pump gas one time and that gasoline was stinking on my hands and I said, oh no, this is not for me. That was a life commandment. And it's hard to break life commandments. When people, whatever people are not getting at home, they bring those frustrations to the church. And they bring it to the church because there's no place else they can get away with that. You can't go on the job and act crazy, act ugly. Don't nobody on your job care about how you feel or what happened to you between you and your wife or you and your mama, whoever. They don't care about that, and you don't go to work telling them about it. But whatever we cannot accomplish in our personal lives, we bring that to the church because that's the only place we can get away with that. Does that make sense? Okay, so on page 59, we look at praying as a family. Somebody want to give me the time? Okay, gentlemen, would you just shut your eyes for just a second, please? Okay, you can open up. Okay, I want to keep up with this time. Okay. Praying as a family for the church. You cannot pretend that bad things don't happen in the church. We have to allow our children to know that sometimes grown-ups do things that you're not allowed to do. You don't want to do it in a gossipy way. You don't want to get in the car and the children in the back seat, you just steady griping and complaining about what happened in church, or on your cell phone calling your best friend who wasn't at church that day to let her know everything that happened. But you do want your children to know grown-ups make mistakes too. Things happen in the church because you want them to not be naive. Does that make sense? There are things that you have to teach your sons. If your son is black, there's some things you better teach him. My husband had a Cadillac, it was a Seville, and he would let the boys drive it. And every time they drove that car, police stopped him. One of them stopped right in front of the house. Hey, boy, where are you going? In the driveway. So my husband had to come out and tell me, yeah, that's my car, and that's my son. Okay? There are things that you teach a girl. You sit in a chair, you don't lay up on a chair and with your legs up in the air. You don't do that. I was so glad. I said, when I get grown, the first thing I'm going to do is slouch in a chair. Now, you know how you have those things that you go do when you get grown? I'm going to sit and throw my leg over the arm of the chair. That's what I'm going to do as soon as I get grown. So there are things that you look forward to when you grow up. And one of those things you look forward to is being loving with family members and church members. We ought to strive to get along. Not everybody's lovable, but you got to love them past that because somebody don't love you. And then we have to understand, like is a carnal word. Love is a spiritual word. You have to love each other. We have to, because God has commanded that of us. But you don't necessarily have to like them or like their ways. I was talking to Kiana this morning, and I said to her, Kiana, it's been over 60 years, and I'm still trying to like that one brother of mine. I didn't like him from the beginning. He was in the house 3 years before I even noticed he was there. Honestly. I love him. I've been trying over 60 years to like him, Bishop. I just don't like him. And so you're going to find in your family people that you don't like for different reasons. Everybody got an Uncle Ray Ray. And you know at the family reunion, you know Ray going to get up, you know he going to get drunk, and he going to cuss everybody out. You already know that. Everybody got an Aunt Sally. You know from the time she sits down, she just going to talk about people. As soon as they walk away, she going to talk about them. We know this, but you still love your family members. Now, if this brother of mine gets in trouble, yeah, I'll be there. I really would be. I'm just hoping he don't. Anyway, and ask y'all to pray for me, because this is about praying for folk in your church family. Page 60 at the bottom half, we learn about worshiping as a family. Now, because the idea of family has gone through societal changes, we now have, it used to be just mom and daddy. maybe grandma and grandpa. But we've got all kinds of families now, and it's described as any unit or domestic group that's bonded by blood, by marriage, by informal adoption, sexual mating, or legal ties. And that would include children that are foster children or children that become yours when you adopt them. Because when you go to court with that adoption, they say, the judge says this child now has all the rights and privileges of your natural children. So our families are comprised differently now, but they still family. They still family. We have folk in the church, they family. No matter how they act. You got to love them, because maybe they don't like you either. They'll have an obligation to do that. It helps. It really helps. But you try to forge relationships. You're not going to be close to everybody because some personalities just clash. And we call that personality conflict. But we have difficulties in families with blended families. One of the things that I like most about Bishop, he's a liberal. And this church is comprised of we're a blended family. Because Bishop asked me, he said, what is that y'all say? I said, Baptist born, Baptist bred. When I die, I'll be a Baptist dead. And it might be, That's exactly what he said. Well, but I also told Bishop when I came here, I said, listen, because he didn't ask me to come up here and tell my story and I shake your hand as the pastor. He didn't do any of that. He's a liberal. So we can become members just by showing up and staying here. So I said to him when I first came, I said, Bishop, I don't church hop. I know how churches are. I don't think this is a perfect church I'm coming to, but I want you to know this. In spite of the fact that I'm Baptist, I plan to have my funeral right here. I want them to roll my carcass right up here. I'm glad there's plenty of room, just in case I don't lose no weight and have to have that extra large casket. So I'm appreciative of that. I'm so serious. I don't care what happens in the church. I don't care who sit next to me. I don't care what y'all do. And the reason I sit on the second pew is because I don't want to know what you're doing. I don't want to see it, because it might make me sin. I might be looking and say, oh, Lord, some blue pants will wear anything. See, I don't want to see that. I don't want to say that. I don't want to think that. I want to just be able to look at the pastor at the podium and hear the word of God. I don't want distractions. Everybody knows what they're weak to. And some things I think is funny. Quick story, because I'm looking at the clock. We had a preacher that used to fellowship with us. And he looked like and sounded just like Cedric the Entertainer. He really did. And so he'd be preaching, and I'm waiting on them to say, baby. So my sister and I, because all our family left by the same stuff, he came into the church, and we were kind of sitting toward the back. And we normally don't do that. But when he walked by, and you know, when you get tickled in church, you don't just get tickled. It's hilarious to you. So when he walked by, we both busted out laughing. And when he got to the pulpit, and we were laughing so hard, we had to leave the church. We had to leave. That's why I sit on the second row. Because I know what kind of church member I am. We laughed all the way, we were on 70, all the way to Emerson exit. Really. We know what we do. We know how we are. And so the Bible tells you that you have to control your thoughts and control your actions. Eastern Star, we used to fellowship with them, and there was this guy, and he was gay. And when he shouted, he would just roll into laughter. And I got so tickled. My girlfriend was sitting next to me, and she just pushed my head down, and I'm just laughing. He laughed when he, and every time he did that, I'm right behind him. So my girlfriend laid my head down. She said, girl, here, take this tissue, pretend you shouting. Because when you get tickled in church, you get hysterical. So whatever is going to mess you around, that's what you need to avoid in church. Because we didn't come here for play. We didn't come here for show. What kind of church member are you? And then we want to encourage our children to be a part of the church fellowship, and that every member is important. Every single member is important. And if the seat next to you is empty, that's on us. We learned when we did the training over Temple of Praise, Total Praise and Worship. 98% of Christians do not invite people to their church. We should not put all that on the pastor. We shouldn't. Bishop has given us tools. He's trained, we've had training sessions. He wants to make sure that we know how to be good church members. And so if the chair next to you is empty, it's because we didn't do our jobs. Just think about that. And then let me say this, how you behave yourself, that's how the church members are going to feel. That's how they can feel. If you don't respect something that belongs to you, nobody else is going to respect it. And so, and then I want to ask this question. How do we handle when people we live with are unchurched? Because being unchurched does not mean unsaved. It just means you ain't went through the correct doors yet. Would you agree with that? Okay, so how do you handle it? How should you handle it? If you have members in your house that you leave there when you go to church. Now, in yesteryear, everybody went but the dog, and he better stand guard while I'm gone. When Mama said we going to church, everybody in the house went. Now, there were times when Daddy didn't go because he was hungover from the night before. Everybody knows somebody's daddy who doesn't go to church. Rest assured, your unchurched family members are watching you. They want to know how you do it. Don't think it's only children watching you. Oh, that's how you handle it when you get mad at the pastor. You call people up. You complain about him. I think Grandma ought to do that. Well, those are your opinions, and you need to take them to God, not to him. Does that make sense? And if you have an unchurched husband, women, we already know. If they say bring a dish to the church and you making a cake, you better make two and leave one at home. Because you don't want your spouse, you don't want your husband to think that everything is more important than him. How would he ever want to go to that church? So if we're praying together and we're learning together in our homes, we will be more likely to know how to blend with other people. I don't have to know all your business. I said early when I came here, when Bishop said, I'm going to turn all the counseling over to you, I said then, members, please don't come to me telling me what other folk need. Well, I hope you start counseling them, because and then they want to give me the story. Now, I don't want the story. You should be telling that to the Lord and praying for that person. If you know their business, why are you not talking to the Lord about it? Why are you talking to me? That's called gossip. And gossip will kill a church. Absolutely. Do we have any questions, any discussion? Oh, yes. I forgot about that, Bishop. Oh, and I want to say one other thing before we do the pledge. How many of you live in the same household and yet your family members go to different churches? Okay. How's that working for you? How do you handle that? You do it by respecting their right to choose. God gave all of us the ultimate freedom of choice. When he said, I'm going to let you choose. You can accept or reject me. That's the ultimate in decision making, in your right to choose. So we're not here to compel you got to go to my church. Anytime two people agree, it ain't a problem. My husband's over at Friendship, and I'm here. I'm here because this is where God sent me, and he's where he is because that's where God. And we've never went to separate churches prior to this. So he shares with me, and I share with him. And every Monday, just about, you're going to listen to Bishop's sermon, you're going to listen to the songs, you're going to look at what I do at the Sunday school. What doesn't necessarily have to be me teaching it, but you're going to have to listen. And then, and then you tell me all your stuff. When I walk in the door, because we hang later, how was church today? Oh, it was wonderful. I'm so glad you asked. And then I want to hear his story. We ain't got to fight about that. It's all about Jesus. The Bible says, come let us reason together. So you don't have to fight people because they're different in your family. I had a couple that I was counseling when I was doing court order counseling. She was Seventh-day Adventist. He was Methodist. So he went to church. Him and the kids went to church with her on Saturday, and they all went to church with him on Sunday. Y'all got that thing worked out. I don't see no problem there. Let's talk about the other things that are going on. So, let's just get to the pledge. Can we all stand and the fifth pledge. Repeat, please. I am a church member. I will lead my family to be good members of this church as well. We will pray together for our church. We will worship together in our church. We will serve together in our church. And we will ask Christ to help us fall deeper in love with this church because he gave his life for her. This, you can be seated. This is the bride of Christ. And you just ought not be able to treat the wife any kind of way. We'll wait on the kids, I guess. It is no secret. It is no secret that Bishop loves Sister Scott. So there are some things I just can't walk up to him and talk about his wife. And he would be what I consider a gentleman. Bishop, you gonna let us talk about your wife?
Is that a question?
Yes. There you go. There you go. Or you'll be speaking in the air because he already said he ain't gonna listen. Now, I might leave your presence, but I'm going to say 2 or 3 things. When my husband was moderator of the convention, of our convention, I told them, because, you know, you always got to have remarks for First Lady of the convention. I don't like nobody that don't like David Johnson. I don't even wait on you to do something to me. Just let me know you don't like him, and I don't like you. And I was serious about that. You can't talk about him to me. You take that someplace else. And to show you, now Bishop, he walk away if you want to talk ugly. But listen, y'all remember the Sunday that he said, it was just a couple of weeks ago. He says, look at my wife.